I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Kuiperium from Dragon A Games. Kuiperium is a two-player worker placement game. You heard me right, that's two-player, that's not 1 to 4, that's not 2 to 4, that's not 1 to 2, that's a two-player game of worker placement, of trying to build out your tableau in space as you ultimately try to make your way towards the final planet before the other player through the acquisition of various discovery points in the game. This is a prototype, all rules, components, all that stuff subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. With that said, how do you actually play the game? Well, basically in Kuiperium, you're going to be going back and forth, taking actions from one of 5 possible actions. The general idea, before we go into the exact actual action selection, the general idea is you are going to be playing cards down into this grid. So for example, you'll go ahead and play a card, and you're going to be placing it in such a way that the player, you're going to get a benefit of whatever text is on the card that's shown on this side, and then you're effectively building a worker placement zone for your opponent where they will have the opportunity to go over here and get the rewards on the card. So when you play a card, you're trying to be mindful of the benefit you get, you're trying to be mindful of the benefit, the worker placement spot, the ongoing worker placement spot that your opponent will get, and you're trying to be mindful of how your card lines up on these corners so that you can gain synergy points. You can go ahead and get those and earn the various discovery points as you go through the game in order to move along the track. That's the kind of high level aspect of what you're doing. As you play the game, you're going to be taking one of 5 possible actions. The first action, as I just said over there, you're going to go ahead and play a card. You have your hand of cards, you pick a card, and you play it onto the board, and let's say I'll go ahead and place this one down over here. I'll get whatever text and or symbols are on the side of the card over here. I'll earn those, and that's the action. The card's played, we're done. We'll possibly get, I'm going to move my player board up here so you can see this, you'll possibly be able to earn various benefits, affinity bonuses, once you've unlocked these based on the color of what you played, but we're not going to focus on that just yet. We'll get to that later. That's going to be the first action you can take. The second action you can take is you can go ahead and place a worker out. This is going to be based on the starting zones you have on the board where you can place workers to get various things, but also you can go ahead, your opponent can place workers down on spots that you have put down for them, and they will have the opportunity to get those things, although not yet. In order to get the various rewards, they have to take a recall turn where they pull back their workers, in which they'll be getting the various effects of where their workers are placed, and sometimes, in fact, none of these cards over here, but sometimes recalling a full 3 workers is relevant because it means you'll get more bonuses. So for example, if we go ahead and show you this card over here, when a player goes ahead and puts a worker down here, they'll get this side if they pull back a worker, but they'll get this side too if they pull back all 3 workers, which gives you an incentive to pull back multiple workers at once, although there are also incentives to pull back workers more quickly. Lots of incentives across the board. So it's going to be the first actions you can take. You can go ahead and play a card, you can place a worker, you can go ahead and recall a worker, you can also add a card to your secret lab. There's a secret lab you have on your board over here where you'll be able to place cards. Some cards can only be played from a secret lab, some cards are stronger if played from a secret lab, and other times you just have a card from your secret lab. Most cards can be played from your hand, but when you play a card from your secret lab, you'll go ahead and just play that, but adding a card to your secret lab is going to be one of the actions you can take. If you already have a card there, you'll take it back. That's going to be your secret lab spot over here. And then lastly, you can go ahead and refresh your hand. You can discard the cards in your hand, draw up to 4 cards, go ahead and pick that, and that can be very helpful, especially when you're trying to be mindful of the various things you're going for and whether those cards suit you. It's far from a dead turn. It's a strategic play that is often necessary. So again, those are the 5 actions. Play a card, place a worker, recall workers, place a card in your secret lab, or discard cards and draw back up to 4 are the actions you're taking. As far as other things going on, as far as other elements, first of all, there are going to be these over here, these affinity bonuses over here. These are things that you're going to be getting these affinity bonuses when you go ahead and jettison some cards. We'll explain how that works shortly, but when you jettison a card of a certain color, you'll be able to go ahead and activate this specific thing. So for example, this card over here, if I jettison this card, and I'll explain how that works shortly, then I'll go ahead and I'll flip this teal card over here, and now whenever I play a teal card, I can also go ahead and pay a Kuiperium to get the bonus on the card. And these cards will have 4 different bonuses, and you can take those before or after playing a card, but getting all your affinity bonuses in play, or at least a bunch of them in play sooner rather than later, will mean you're taking slightly stronger turns as you go through the game. As far as how you jettison a card, that's going to be the core action you take at the control center and the core way of gathering discovery points. There's a few ways you can go ahead and gather discovery points in the game, but when you jettison a card, you're going to be taking a card, you're going to be removing it from play, and you're going to be adding up all its affinity bonuses over here, all its synergy bonuses, based on the colors it matches. So when you place a card down into your grid, you're being mindful of how it pairs up with all these spots around it, and eventually, let's see if we can put some cards out over here. We can go ahead and place place this card over, I don't even know how I want to do this over here. If I place this card, you see, this is where having the right hand of cards matters a lot. But let's just pretend we have this card over here, and we have, you know, I don't know. This is too hard to make it work right now. Let's do this over here. Let's put this like this over here. This card over here. This card over here, like so. And there we go. We have a bunch of synergy bonuses based on these different colors matching up with the different areas, and to get a bunch of points over there from those bonuses, and you're going to use those as well as specific discovery points you're earning on the cards to be able to move up on this discovery track on the side over here. So you're going to be jettisoning the card, you'll move it from your grid, you got rid of it, but you also got rid of a worker placement spot for your opponents. You want to be mindful of that, that's going to be a way you take out your opponent's worker placement spots while making sure you can continue building out your own grid, and then you're going to use those points to move your ship along the track, and you have to be mindful you can only ever move those numbers, and which means sometimes if I ever earn 2 discovery points, then I cannot pass this card. You have to earn the full amount in one shot. So you can go ahead and split 3 discovery points. You can go 1, 2, 3, but you cannot take 2 discovery points and go past the 3, nor can you do it from 2 plus 1 does not equal 3 in this. You have to earn them all in a single shot, which means some of these spots, the 3s, the 3s, the 4, the 5, those all require very large, very specific turns that operate a certain way in order to actually cross those gaps. As far as other things going on this board over here, there's going to be a variety of bonuses you can earn different ways from those different spots you can go. You're also going to have your strategy cards you'll unlock when you get over here. That's going to be 3 powerful cards you get at the beginning of the game that you choose one of them to activate when you hit that spot over there. There's going to be other benefits. You're going to choose different lanes to go, slowly moving along until eventually a player hits here and wins the game. And that is pretty much what's going on in Kuiperium. Past explaining some of the various benefits as far as, you know, things you can do, as far as the spy action you can do to remove certain cards, as far as, you know, being able to gather Kuiperium, which you're going to need because you're going to be spending 4 Kuiperium every time you go ahead and jettison a card. You're going to be trying to be mindful of knocking out your opponents from the zones they're in so they cannot take those stronger recall actions. There's a lot of things you can do to slowly advance how well you're playing, as well as slowly hindering what your opponent is doing in this game. And that brings us to the review, starting off with ease of play. Ease of play. Rulebook is very easy to dive into. This is a 2-player worker placement game. A few nuances as far as how it separates itself from other worker placements. If you've played worker placement before, this is going to have a lot of the similar elements, familiar elements, that will make it a game that is easy to dive into. Game time's not that long. Maybe your first game might get closer to an hour, but I'd say this is a game that you can usually knock out in closer to 45 minutes. Half an hour is probably doable, but I don't know if I can get it down that fast. Probably about a 45-minute game, and table space is not that bad. 2 players, single board here, not a lot going on as far as table space. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which is the variable worker placement aspect. You're going to be placing workers down on the board, trying to be mindful of when to pull them back, trying to be mindful of pulling back 1 or 2 at a time, or possibly trying to get those stronger actions, but being mindful your opponent is constantly, frequently messing with you as you play through the game. You're trying to decide as far as how you play a card to get the bonuses, but the stronger cards are going to give you more bonuses, but you also want to be kind of mindful of trying to jettison those cards as soon as possible, because effectively, you are giving yourself a stronger bonus once, but you're potentially exposing your opponent to multiple stronger bonuses, so you want to be very mindful of trying to get those cards in play and take them out of play at a reasonable time frame. Holding onto cards too long to get the perfect synergy bonuses over there is not necessarily the right move when you can possibly start activating your affinity bonuses sooner than other players, so you're really trying to balance what you do, how efficient your actions are, versus how quickly you can take repeated actions in the game. You're trying to advance on these tracks as you go, and trying to be mindful of that as you go through it, while also trying to just get as much as possible as far as getting your discovery points in play, upgrading your affinity bonuses, placing all the cards you need to play, trying to be mindful of which bonuses will help or hurt you the most, frequently choosing between discarding cards. The discarding card is a big deal in this game because of how the cards heavily play into your strategy and the various abilities they have and the way those bonuses line up in other cards. Playing the cards, playing through your whole hand just because you can, is rarely the right move. You often want to play through the cards that help you and then discard the rest and move on to the next hand as soon as possible, because it really matters what you get in this game and when you play it. As far as what I don't like in the game, the biggest thing I have, the biggest pet peeve, and it's not pet peeve, the biggest complaint I have, and it's really worth noting, this is a prototype. All rules, components, everything subject to change, so heavily take that into account because this is a fairly big complaint for me, but it's also might not be an existing complaint down the road, so factor that in. But the graphic design and text size in this game is horrible. I'm going to use the word horrible. The text over here, I'm just going to go ahead and show you this over here. This is a card, as far as you can see over here. the text is tiny. Even the symbology is not that large either. Meaning even symbols, text is okay, fine, you know, maybe I'm not supposed to see your text, I'll see my text, but I literally have to hold these cards up pretty close. The readability on this game is not great. And the graphic design for the symbols should be larger and more distinguished. Anything from your affinity bonuses to the card themselves, I think this needs some real cleanup as far as the graphic design, presentation, and general absorbability of the information. It is not a small little complaint, it is a fairly large complaint, but it's balanced by the fact that this is a prototype, so that may be a non-existent complaint by the time you get the game. It's very hard being, sometimes it's hard reviewing games that aren't fully finished yet because of the fact that if I don't mention a complaint and you get the final game, you're like, hey Alex, why don't you say anything? And if I do mention it, it may not exist. So hopefully I solved that by just being as clear as possible. This is a current complaint and it may not exist. Check the game out. You can probably see art and components before you buy the game if you're viewing this video, you know, 2 years down the road. Past that, there's a whole balance aspect in play of playing stronger cards and being mindful of your opponent, of, you know, being mindful of the stronger worker placements in the game. While I appreciate that stronger benefits to yourself give your opponent stronger worker placements, I didn't feel there was a ton of decision space around what I do there. For the most part, there's a lot of decision space around keeping certain cards based on how they fit into your grid and the abilities they'll give you, but ultimately giving my opponent stronger worker placement zones and getting stronger benefits, it didn't feel like there's a strong push-pull of, do I do this? It might give you that. It was kind of like, no, I'm going to get the benefits and I'll just try to jettison the card as fast as possible. I didn't feel a strong sense of a tug-of-war as I had that balance in play. So it's not really so much a complaint, but rather I think a core aspect of the game that may have been opportunities to have it be more interesting, and for me it was just a aspect or feature of the game. As far as I can see others not liking, first of all, there's a lot of screwage in this game. There's a lot of times where you're going to be placing things down, trying to build up, well, placing your opponent's side, trying to build up towards the perfect action. Players are going to be destroying your components. You're going to be trying to save for that action and pay in the 4 Kuiperium and get your benefit, and someone will go ahead and destroy 2 of your Kuiperium, and now you're kind of stuck with your workers doing nothing and having dead pullback turns. There's a lot of times in this game where people can screw with you, and ideally will screw with you, because they are trying to play the optimal game experience. If you're not interested in screwage, this game has a decent amount of screwage. Additionally, obviously, it's a 2-player only game, which means if you're not the kind of person who's playing 2-player games, you are not the target audience for this game. Which brings me to final thoughts on Kuiperium. And for me, there's a lot of elements I like about Kuiperium, while also some aspects of it kind of stand out as being unique and interesting, while some just didn't. It's a fine game. It works. It gives you a solid worker placement. It gives you a lot of cards that you're trying to filter through, trying to find those cards. You are trying to play cards into a grid while removing those cards from the grid at the same time to advance your tracks. Ultimately, for me, Kuiperium is a solid worker placement game that does a lot of things that are just work well together. I don't know of anything drastically innovative for me. Like I said already, the one thing that I think is theoretically more innovative, the idea of stronger benefits and stronger actions for your opponent, didn't give me a strong sense of choice as I played through it. Overall, I very much enjoyed this one, though. It's a 3.5 out of 5. Gives you a decent amount of things to consider and plan around as you optimize your way towards getting your ship to the final planet faster than your opponent. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, if you're looking for a different 2-player only worker placement game that has started delivering, or is delivering, or delivered already, King Kill was another prototype, another Kickstarter game I covered that the final game has arrived and all that, and it gives you a 2-player worker placement game with a ton of things going on. Could be a bit messy, but has a lot of fun things happening. And then if you're just looking for an incredible 2-player worker placement game, very unique degree of blocking and mechanisms involved, Tarji is an excellent 2-player worker placement game that just really does a phenomenal job. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.